News. We're going to talk about a very important thing. We're going to talk about dealing with your database. The key to building strong relationships, and it's not the spam mail that you're sending. It's not the ambush marketing. It's not that big email trove of WhatsApps that you send off. Regine le Roux is the managing director of Reputation Matters. That does you more disservice than good, doesn't it?
By not sending to the right thing, absolutely, Clarence, by not having your databases and sending to the wrong people, definitely is going to have a massive impact on your reputation and be a reputational risk.
But it can be a treasure trove too.
It absolutely is. So it is a double-edged sword, but I think what's so important is to make sure that your databases are up to date. Because if it's not up to date, it can actually get you into quite embarrassing situations if you're going to be phoning or emailing somebody to the wrong email address or wrong phone number. But also, it's so crucial for during a crisis, because if there's a crisis scenario and you urgently need to get communication out there of whatever that crisis is or that drama is, if your database isn't up to date, then it's going to be absolutely chaos to try and find the right email address, the right telephone number of people to let them know of what's happened. So when it comes to a reputation, you obviously want to be proactive. You don't want a crisis to happen, but you want to navigate through a crisis as smoothly and as quickly as possible to build your reputation. The last thing that you want to worry about is somebody's email address.
Absolutely. And people have been very mobile of late, and mobility in very many forms, working from home, maybe working not from the office, maybe from a different email address as well. So it's a completely different time in the game, is it not?
It is so much so. And I think it's something that's so neglected, though. We kind of think we'll get to it. It's not that an important thing to do until you actually need to get hold of somebody and you realize, shucks, our database isn't up to date. Because what we often see, because we do a lot of research, we quantify reputations. And when we do research, we obviously send out surveys to large databases of the client. The customers have that. And the biggest stumbling block is not the questionnaire, it's not collecting the data. It's actually getting those databases up to scratch so that it actually lands in front of a person. Because I think often people think, oh, no, our database is fantastic. We've got a database of thousands, and that's really good. But if you have a look at that database and it says info@helpdesk@, it's not going to get you anywhere.
Yeah.
That email is going to go through to a bot, and maybe in the year 2052 you'll get an answer.
if you're lucky. I think on that point, what does an ideal database look like?
So at a minimum, the person's name, which is spelled correctly. It would be good to have a surname if you have that. But then an email address and a contact number as an absolute basic. And the email address, as I said, isn't going to an info@ or just a generic email. It would also be good, especially from a communications point of view, as you're building relationships. From a business point of view, perhaps key dates like the person's birthday, if you want to connect with them when it's their birthday, or when to follow up. I think what is also neglected is having a really good customer relationship management, a CRM system in place, where you can update, make sure that you know that when people have anniversaries or birthdays, or even in situations if somebody might have passed on. You don't want to be in an embarrassing situation where you're phoning somebody and they obviously, it will be very embarrassing, and again, might be a reputational risk in the long run.
My producer is Amy Ray Rispel, and she tells me horrifying stories about emails and the way she's addressed. She's the producer. She's an opportunity for your brand, for your service, to be discussed here on Cape Talks. You don't want to call her Amy Rat Rispel. You want to call her Amy Ray Rispel. It's things like that is going to frustrate any successes, marketing successes that you want to achieve in conversation with her. I wanted to ask just about Pop Your Act and to what extent our efforts that we may have been, applying in the past are limited these days.
I think that's such an important point that you're raising, Clarence, and that also goes with having a proper database in place, is making sure that you have permission to actually send out correspondence and reach out to that person. And that plays a really big role from having a database up to date, because a big part of that, and I'm by no means a legal expert when it comes to this, and I think that there's a lot of information out there, people better suited to answer a popular question, but I do know that you need to give permission. You cannot just send out marketing or sales stuff, direct marketing, without giving a person giving permission, but then also in all of your communication, making sure that you can give somebody that option to opt out, to not receive communication from you going forward. And if you don't keep your database up to date, you can get into a lot of hot water by sending somebody communication if they've indicated they no longer want to receive anything from you.
Yeah, and the role of professionals in this exercise, I mean, everybody's at it now. Social media is their means to the market, and some of them are employing it effectively, but it is becoming a science these days. Do you, at some point in your business history stage, should you look at professionals who have really kind of thought through the issues?
We've definitely seen, in terms of companies becoming a lot more mindful and making sure that their databases are up to date. I mean, there's some companies that we've worked with for many years, large corporates. We work with large state-owned entities. And surprising, or not surprising, but what is wonderful to see is when we started working with them initially, databases were chaos. But working with them and seeing that how having an improved database actually improves communication, it improves that flow of communication. It definitely has a big. It seems like such a small thing on the to-do list, or such an irritation, but the impact that it has is absolutely, makes a big difference. It's those small little things that make a massive impact, especially when it comes to reputation.
And surely your social media following is your database too.
Definitely, it is an important part of it. But I think again, that's actually quite an important point that you touching on is. Not everybody is on social media, and not everybody is necessarily on WhatsApp. And that goes back to understanding who your audience is. Who are your stakeholders? How do they want to receive communication from you? Because I think too often it's dreamt up to send out a newsletter. No one reads a newsletter, unfortunately. So much time goes into it. But if you don't understand your audience and what channels of communication to use, which again links back to do you have the right contact information? Because maybe people love WhatsApp, but you've only got email addresses and vice versa. So it's really important to make sure that you're using the right channels of communication to reach your audience. So yes, social media, absolutely, by all means, that can really work particularly well with, depending on which industry you're in, depending which generations you are reaching out to. But again, you do need that information to maximize it to your benefit and to their benefit.
We're going to have to rest it there, Regine le Roux. Be a little more circumspect about that database and how you put it to good use. It can be an asset. It can also be a serious liability. Thank you very much, Regine. It's time for